Hello, my name is Tina Doyle, and I'm a collaborator with Idea STEM. I'm here today to talk about essential requirements in higher education. Essential requirements are the vital tasks a student must demonstrate to be able to be successful in a course. What if the way a course is designed is quietly deciding who gets to belong? Not because students can't master the material, but because they can't do it in the one way we've always expected. At 18, Maya's professor told her she couldn't pursue science because she couldn't pour properly. A tremor in her hand made the act wobbly and slow, made worse by medication side effects. But she could explain every reaction and understood why each substance mattered. Still, her professor labeled pouring as an essential requirement. He offered no adaptations, no alternative demonstrations of competence, just a firm belief that pouring was the gateway to doing work in a lab. In other classes, Maya thrived. She presented complex lab theories, collaborated with peers, and her professors helped identify meaningful roles on lab teams that didn't require her to pour. Instead, she took on more complex responsibilities such as designing experiments and analyzing the results. These faculty members didn't lower expectations. They recognized that her strengths aligned with the true goals of the lab and adapted the methods to support her success. But one rigid standard could have derailed her persistence in higher education and science altogether. That standard could have become a wall telling her she was not able, when she knew she was capable of participating in science, especially based on her performance in other lab courses. Maya's story isn't unique. She, like others with a disability, encounter ableist systems. Post-secondary education was not built with students with disabilities in mind. It emerged from tradition, grounded in ideals of independence, rigor, and merit, often defined through the narrow normative standards. Historically, institutions treated disability as a deficiency to be accommodated on the margins, rather than a dimension of human diversity to be centered in design. Even today, many essential requirements rely on assumptions about what a capable, that's quote unquote capable, student looks like, treating one method as the only valid way to complete a task, instead of focusing on what the task truly demands and how a student can best demonstrate their knowledge. This pattern repeats across disciplines. A student who's hard of hearing is told that she can't work as a nurse because she can't hear the stethoscope. A student with chronic pain is told her field is expected to work a standard 9 to 5 job schedule. A law student with anxiety is discouraged from trial advocacy because you need to think fast on your feet. And a geology student with mobility disabilities is excluded from field work, not because of safety, but because everyone is hiking in, leaving them unable to complete core requirements. Each of these examples reflects a version of the POUR test, where the method becomes the gatekeeper to participation or success, rather than what the skill is meant to assess. In these moments, there's often little reflection or consideration about alternative ways to demonstrate competence, or whether that means using a digital stethoscope, offering flexible or modified scheduling, providing progressive coaching for oral advocacy, deploying a drone for field observation, or providing 3D models of field samples, or selecting a physical accessible site where possible. However, in many cases, essential requirements emerge from a combination of pedagogical goals, discipline expectations, and operational realities. They are shaped by practical concerns, such as what is manageable to deliver greater scale. And that is precisely why it is important to reflect on and revisit essential requirements. Do these requirements still reflect what matters most in student learning? Are they aligned with the core skills or understandings we intend to develop? Without that reflection, assumptions can easily go unquestioned. Over time, tradition or efficiency may overshadow educational purpose. And it is in these moments, often unintentionally, that ableism can take root, in the belief that there's only one correct way to learn, one valid way to demonstrate competence, or one standard definition of capability that relies on memory, speed, or physical performance. So the real education isn't about enforcing conformity. It's about fostering insight, creativity, and critical thinking. And when we prioritize compliance over competence, we don't just exclude students, we lose their ideas, their solutions, and their talent. So what can we do? We can pause and ask, what is the true essence of this task? What exactly are we trying to assess? Would there be significant consequences if this skill was performed differently, such as risk to safety? Does it truly need to be performed in one specific way? If so, why? Who might be excluded if we insist on a single method? In short, could students demonstrate their learning in more than one way? Questioning whether a requirement is truly essential isn't about lowering standards. It's about educators and system designers critically examining what we ask of our students and refining those standards to ensure they reflect what genuinely matters in learning. And this brings us back to Maya. She didn't fail science, but science almost failed her, especially if she believed she was not capable. Years later, Maya leads a lab. She's designing experiments that save lives. Her team uses adaptive tools, voice controls, and a robotic arm that pours solutions with more precision than a human hand. It's not a workaround. It's innovative science. The real lesson is that flexibility, openness to innovation, and a willingness to re-examine what is truly essential makes all the difference. That shift in mindset didn't just keep Maya in science, it allowed her to thrive. And the next Maya is already in someone's classroom, in grade school, high school, or higher education. At each step, students with disabilities face discouragement, especially in the sciences. Not because they lack ability, but because the system continues to test how well they can conform instead of innovating and recognizing their capacity to contribute. Let's be clear. The real test shouldn't be whether students fit outdated norms. It should be how far their knowledge, creativity, and determination can take them when systems are designed with them in mind. And when we move beyond tradition to focus on innovation and discovering new ways to achieve the same goals, that matters. Standards matter, but we need to ask, are these standards truly essential? Why do they exist in this form? Who do they include and who might they leave out? And it also asks educators and system designers to be just as creative, to question tradition, reimagine assessment, and design learning that reflects possibility, not limitation. Students with disabilities already navigate inaccessible systems every day, constantly solving problems those systems create. What if our teaching models adapted to them? That might mean rethinking how we structure labs. It might mean designing more flexible assessments. It might mean choosing inclusion over convenience when those two things conflict. When we shift our focus from enforcing rigid rules to cultivating human potential, we stop asking, can you pour? And we start asking, what do you know? And how can we help you demonstrate it? Because when we recognize that the problem is the system and the rule, not the person, we create the conditions for human potential to thrive. Thank you.